Warning, the Savage Nation contains adult language, adult content, psychological nudity. Listener discretion is advised. Now, here he is, author of Liberalism is a Mental Disorder, Trump's War, and God, Faith, and Reason, Michael Savage.
My question is do you still think a diverse student body is a compelling interest? You opined on it then. You wrote it then. Right. What do you believe now?
Well, a couple things there, Senator. First of all, the Adarand case is in the context of contracting. The Bakke case is in
So you think that those cases using race to remedy past discrimination is unconstitutional? That's what you wrote then.
Well, in light of the precedent of the Supreme Court representing a client in that case. And I go through, I think, as you know, and I just want to reiterate, there's precedent in the higher education context, in the contracting context, that are somewhat distinct, and those precedents have been applied. I'm happy to talk about my cases, the E.C. Ito, the
But you're not happy to talk to me about the opinions you've expressed in the past.
You get the picture.
You still hold those.
Sympathy for the devil. Cory Booker is pushing racial hiring based upon race only, not on qualifications. And as I've said, as a victim of affirmative action, it's a long time ago, yes, and I've overcome it through very hard work, but they try to steal my birthright from me. Millions upon millions of white males have been victimized by affirmative action in hiring, scholarships, awards, and in other ways. Everyone knows that. But we've accepted it even though it's unconstitutional and illegal. So here we have Cory Booker, a very proud graduate of Stanford University. We don't know how he got in. We assume he got straight A's, and that's why he was selected. We assume he was made a Rhodes Scholar like Bill Clinton was because they were ushering him into the New World Order as one of the future presidents of America. You see, the Rhodes Scholarship unto itself is a very interesting road to the American presidency. How it goes through Rhodes in England, I'll never understand at Oxford University, but you'll figure it out one day. So here's Cory Booker, Rhodes Scholar, pushing Mr. Kavanaugh to say that he will use affirmative action, he'll support affirmative action as a Supreme Justice, to make sure that less qualified individuals get jobs or are moved ahead or are given scholarships. That's what's going on today, and that's trying to pass himself off as Mr. Fairness and fair-minded. Well, I'll let you decide. You're the voter, not me. The big question today is, who is the anonymous White House snake? Have you ever been a victim of affirmative action in hiring, scholarships, or awards? What's your story? What is the story about the anonymous White House leaker? Well, for one, it's out of the communist playbook. It's right out of the ex-Soviet Union, where you could accuse someone without even naming yourself. You know, we have a nation of laws here. And one of the tenets of our law is that you are allowed to face your accuser. Now, that was thrown out by the radical feminists who have basically, they're the progenitors of the meltdown of our Constitution. But the radical feminists changed the law and said, no, we don't want you to name the women who are accusing a man of sexual harassment or anything along those lines, because it would expose them and make them vulnerable. So therefore, women can now stand behind black curtains or behind a lead curtain and say he did this, he did that, and destroy a man's life without being exposed in a court of law or elsewhere. Well, now we've reached a point where the same radical feminist ideology of accusations without presentation of the self have become acceptable in the halls of the old York Times, where Pinchy Sulzberger reigns supreme. Now, I find it repugnant that anyone would publish a hateful thing like this about Trump without naming themselves. Melania Trump, who's the best first lady that America's ever had, calls the New York Times op-ed writer cowardly. And she rightly blasted the anonymous sources. As reported in the Daily Caller, First Lady Melania Trump criticized the media's use of anonymous sources and criticized a recent Anon op-ed in the New York Times disparaging President Trump. Here is what she said. To the writer of the op-ed, you are not protecting this country. You are sabotaging it with your cowardly actions, said Melania Trump in a Thursday statement provided to CNN of all places. Melania preceded her declaration on the op-ed with a lengthy condemnation of anonymous sources generally. And listen very carefully, maybe you could learn something about the Soviet Union. Unidentified sources have become the majority of the voices people hear about in today's news. people with no names, are writing our nation's history. If a person is bold enough to accuse people of negative actions, they have a responsibility to publicly stand by their words, and people have a right to defend themselves, explained the First Lady. Now, the op-ed was published yesterday afternoon and in the last hour of this show. It was authored by a self-described senior administration official who wrote, "It may be cold comfort in this chaotic era, but Americans should know that there are adults in the room." Oh, well, that's really a winning line, adults in the room. We fully recognize what is happening, and we're trying to do what's right, even when Donald Trump wrote. And you know the story, right, about senior aides who are trying to undermine the president. If you care to comment on the anonymous White House leaker who you think it was, or comment on whether you've been a victim of affirmative action in hiring, scholarships, or awards, I invite you to call 855-400-7282. Now, if I were a really famous talk show host like some who can't hear, can't see, can't talk, who are on respirators, I would have a tea man, a coffee man. I'd have a cocoa man. I'd have a Coca-Cola man. I'd have a Diet Coke man. But truthfully, I like working alone. I like walking alone. Think of me as Gary Cooper in High Noon. I'd rather be alone than have 25 people around me, to be honest with you. So pardon me for playing with the tea kettle in the middle of the opening. It's kind of funny. In a strange way, it just shows you the show is kind of unscripted and real. But I think the topics are very, very important today. And it, you know, I don't know how anybody can vote for a Democrat unless they're feeding off the Democrat machine. Why would you vote for a party that wants to make you a second-class citizen? Because affirmative action basically makes white males in particular, and Asian males for that matter, second-class citizens. They say to, let's say, a young Chinese American or a Japanese American or a Vietnamese American in America, you have straight A's, you aced the whatever they call them today, the GMATs. I don't know what you take to get into college, SATs. That's what they use, standard aptitude today, I think, SATs. They got all 1600s. And they said, no, we're not going to pick you because you're Chinese or you're Japanese or you're a white male. No, we're not going to pick you. Well, why do you mean you're not going to pick me? Well, you have to go to the back of the bus. So if you are a member of a second-class citizenship rating, meaning a white male or an Asian male, for that matter, today even white women are getting shafted, by the way. You think I'm making all of this up? This is what happens when you open up the door where quality no longer counts and it's all based upon numbers and a numbers game. What you wind up with is inequality. And as I've said many times for many years, without quality, we cannot have equality. That's my line. That's a very important line that you should remember. Without quality, there cannot be equality. It's that simple. Cory Booker should know that. And the more he screams about racial quality and racial justice, and when they use code words for it now, they use code words such as diversity. Do you believe in diversity? Oh, I love diversity if the person's qualified. I wouldn't care if they were transsexual, AC/DC, and foot power. If they were the best at what they were doing, it wouldn't matter to me what their sexual orientation is or what their race is. It wouldn't matter to me. I wouldn't care if the astronaut was AC/DC, foot power, or wind power. Wouldn't matter to me. I care that it's the best astronaut in the world that gets up into the space station. But if you're going to start to pick people based upon qualities other than their qualities and their qualifications, what you're going to have is a meltdown of our society, which we're having right now, which is why, let's go to why we're having screaming in the back of a hearing, a confirmation hearing, because these people in the back of that room who were paid by George Soros, in fact, there's a report of people, and it's on my website and many websites now, they've seen a person, 3 doctors testified they saw a person with a bag of cash giving the money to the screaming, hysterical banshees in the back of the hearing room. That's right, giving them the money outside the building. So that's what we've come down to, the agitprop of the ex-Soviet Union. I love all the story about Russia meddling in our elections. Here we have George Soros and his minions meddling in the appointment of a Supreme Court justice for all the world to see. Right in front of our eyes. We see the meddling right in front of our eyes, screaming hysterical banshees in the back of a hearing room. I like seeing the police manhandling them out. I love seeing them thrown out. But that's not good enough for me. I would say that you have to raise the penalty for that kind of behavior to 6 months of hard labor in a southern prison. That's if the southern prisons are still hardened. I don't know if they are anymore. I don't know what's going on down there. But I would say a minimum of 6 months breaking rocks in Alabama in the hot sun would kind of stop the Banshees from appearing in Washington next time to break up a hearing. But I'm a dreamer. I have a dream that one day we'll have law and order again in America. But getting back to the issues at hand, the anonymous story is one that's attracting a lot of interest, and people are guessing who it is. Now, I put it up on michaelsavage.com, and I said, who is the Anon White House leaker? And some of the people really are smart, which I'm going to read you in a few minutes, and I'm going to let you decide who it is. Many saying, oh, it's not a female, it is a female, and they gave away a word, lodestar, and the only person who used the word lodestar in writing is Vice President Pence. I've read all of it, but I want to read to you what my listeners, the geniuses, think who it might be. This is the Savage Nation. Be here or be nowhere.
Savage.
So America is talking about the Soviet-style grilling that they're giving poor Kavanaugh. You know, the ironic part about Kavanaugh is he's a centrist, middle-of-the-road Republican. He's going to be along the lines of Roberts, who gave us Obamacare. Mark my words. He is by no means a conservative right-winger at all. He's a middle-of-the-road in the schemata of Roberts. And yet you've got these left-wing jackals going after him as though he's, a member of the Third Reich. It's sickening. And how anyone could vote for a Democrat unless they benefit directly, from affirmative action, government handouts, government contracts. Why would you vote for a Democrat? For what reason? And it actually goes to the bigger question. I had this discussion with a lib from New York last week, which I loved. He had such a pathological hatred for Donald Trump. I tried to ask him, why do you hate Donald Trump so much? And his answers made no sense. Well, he puts children in cages. Well, it turns out that policy was initiated by his hero, Barack Obama. He put him in cages. Well, he and the stuff he was saying made no sense. He was foaming mad leftist commie from New York, and he said his wife is even a bigger hater than he is. So, again, I have one open line. If you're a Trump hater, can you please help us, those of us who don't understand your hatred? I could see disagreeing with some of his policies. I could see not liking him personally. But what's the hatred based on? What has he actually done that drives you so insane that you spend your day and night, you get up in the morning, you look in the mirror and you say, I hate Trump. You brush your teeth, and as you're brushing your teeth, you're thinking, I hate Trump. Every meal you take, every breath of air you take, your motivation and your animus is Trump. Why? And I've tried to analyze it. I can't analyze it. And I try to understand the other side. I can't. The economy is booming. We're not at war. We have relative stability in America. The stock market is booming, and yet they hate him? There's no mass starvation. There's no wars. There's no insurrection. What do you hate about Trump so much? I'll bet you can't even answer that question. And if you analyze it, you might fall apart. Well, let's see. August is over. The therapists are back. Your therapist should be in town. You might be able to get an emergency appointment over the weekend. I think that the Trump hatred syndrome, never mind derangement syndrome. I opened my book, Stop Mass Hysteria, with this line. It's a great line. Hatred is in the air. How's that for an opening line? That one line says it all. The left is animated with a hatred I have never seen in my entire life. Politically, that is. I've seen it personally. I've seen individuals filled with hate. I've been known to hate people, too. But I've never seen a mass hatred like this in my entire political career, which now is a quarter of a century long. A quarter of a century is a long time. I mean, I have watched these hearings. I've watched Watergate. I watched the killings at Kent State. I saw Martin Luther King Jr. get shot. I saw JFK get shot. I saw RFK get shot. I've seen the moon launch. I've seen the first man on the moon. I've seen an awful lot of stuff in my political career, but I've never seen such a mass movement of hatred in my entire life. Never. And I actually am remiss in my ability to comprehend this level of hatred. I heard of an old friend of mine, I told you. It was basically, I'm sad to say, I hope he doesn't listen. I'm sure he doesn't. he never went anywhere in life. I never got along with him. I knew him as he's one of the crowd. We kind of vied with each other for the same, I think, position in the crowd. I'm not so sure. We were similar height, wiry. We kind of were friends for a while. Anyway, we lost touch with each other after the years. Well, he went on in life, and he never got anywhere. He wanted to be a writer, as I did. I became a famous writer. No one ever heard of him after that. I was told by a mutual friend that he spends his entire life on Facebook with other Trump haters. That's all he does. Now, here's a man who failed in life, who's achieved nothing, whose entire animus now is hating Trump. Why? Well, I figured it out why. Because Trump represents everything they can't be. Everything they can't be, he is. It's actually based upon jealousy. Do you know that? Oh, yes, it is. Yes, it is. Think about it.
Savage.
So, Mr. Pompeo came out and gave a speech saying it's not him. Pence gave a New York Times op-ed, said it's not him. And people, it's like whodunit, it's like a whodunit. But on my Twitter feed, I have some smart people. Someone says this could be as fake as Russian collusion. Another one says, I wish we'd ignore this in a way. It's the New York Times totally trolling and trying to revive their dying product, in my view. He says it's not a bomb. It's a hoax for attention and readership, and it would be best to deny them the outcome they seek instead of handing it over. Another one says this, Andrew Aliage writes, let's be honest, the left's mass hysteria and causing chaos in the White House is working, and GOP and Trump cannot counter it. That is why 2018 elections will be a bloodbath for the GOP. Mass hysteria works most of the time. Andrew, I hope you're wrong. You might be right. Mass hysteria worked during the Salem witch trials when one girl was hysterical. She made the other girls hysterical. And it's been shown in many cases amongst certain animal groups that if one animal does something, the others follow that animal over the cliff. That's a form of mass hysteria. You do know that. And so we don't know where this will go. Another one says there is no leak of the story is fake. Doesn't matter. It'll blow over. Sham distraction. Then others people, people speculate. And they name people. I'm not going to read who they name because it's just made up, But let's listen to Mr. Pence in his New York Times op-ed saying he didn't do it in clip 8. Let's hear that.
Well, I think it's a disgrace. The anonymous editorial published in the New York Times represents a new low in American journalism. And I think the New York Times should be ashamed. And I think whoever wrote this anonymous editorial should also be ashamed as well. Anyone who would write an anonymous editorial smearing this president, who's provided extraordinary leadership to this country, should not be working for this administration. They ought to do the honorable thing, and they ought to resign.
So it can't be Pence. Do you understand that? He's on record saying he didn't do it, and whoever did should resign. So you're telling me in an age when the NSA can track a sneeze with the DNA in an air droplet, they don't know who did this? Are you joking? They could do it through reverse keystrokes. They can find out who did this. So, I don't know. The whole thing is a joke to get you to think about it. Also, the affirmative action story is a big one because Cory Booker made it a big story. And listen to Cory Booker now in grandstanding over diversity in clip 3 on the Savage Nation.
Do you think having a diverse student body is a compelling government interest? Do you believe that? Do you think having it's not a complicated question. Do you believe having a diverse student body is a compelling government interest?
The Supreme Court has said
stop
so.
Right there. What do you mean by a diverse student body? What does the code word mean? You mean people who are not qualified to get into the university based upon grades or accomplishments should just be made a student at Harvard or Stanford? Are you joking? No, he's not, because that's what's happened. Have you looked at Harvard lately? Have you seen anything great come out of Harvard recently? I love it. I want to go to Harvard. Why? What's waiting for you there? Well, what are you going to get going to Harvard? You're better off with a local junior college than going to Harvard today. You'd have a better chance of learning something instead of having your brain beaten in by some radical feminist. So, no, affirmative action has actually destroyed the great academies of America. Destroyed them. Gutted them. And if this keeps up, we'll reach a day where no one can fly an airplane anymore. KSFO, James, have you been affected by affirmative action?
Yes, 1980 in San Francisco, I applied for the fire department, and the test consisted of a written test and a physical agility test. Well, no women passed the physical agility test, and only a few black people passed the written test, so the city threw it out, and they called it consent decree. And basically, they retested everybody years later to get people in of color and women. But I scored high on the test, and I would.
All right, so that was in 1980. As a result of being shafted from the job you wanted, a fireman in San Francisco, what did you wind up doing in life?
Private sector, did my own stuff, and I'm happy.
Oh, wait, you're probably doing much better than you would have done as a fireman, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, so now here's the thing. So am I doing much better than I would have done if I had been just a lowly professor. But that's not the point. The point is I was highly qualified. I wanted that position. I would have been very happy as a college professor, I thought. And it was my right to be a college professor because I earned it. And you probably would have been happy as a fireman. You earned it. So, you say, well, you did better. Yeah, I did much better. I reached more people in 5 minutes than I would have reached in my entire career as a teacher. Just with one broadcast. That's absolutely true. So I understand that sometimes fate has a way of rewarding us in ways that we don't understand at the time. You know what I'm saying? But there's a big but to it. Think of the hundreds of thousands or millions of people who were shafted by affirmative action, who were not as driven as you or I were, and did not wind up better, but wound up broken in life as a result of it. That's the whole point. There is great social disaster as a result of this social engineering called affirmative action. So here we have Cory Booker, who wants to be president, coming out cleanly saying that he is 100% in favor of stacking the deck against people based on their race. It's crazy. I remember Prop 209. I fought very hard with that one here in California, but I don't want to relive the past. I want to live in the present. However, it makes it very hard for me to live in the present when we have a man like Cory Booker living in the past, trying to drag Kavanaugh down to that level. So those are stories. There's another big one. Alex Jones, who was in the halls of Congress, had a falling out with the ice cream man the other day. I forget his name. What's the ice cream man's name from Texas? No, the ice cream man from Texas, the one I used to call the ice. Yeah. No one remembers his name. The ice cream man. Rubio, the ice cream man. That was yesterday. Well, apparently he ran into someone from CNN and went ballistic on him. And it's such good sound. I want to play Alex Jones calling out a creep from CNN named Darcy, who he says looks like a guilty opossum. Let's listen a little bit in 2009.
You are incredibly shameful, man.
How are you doing, Alex?
You're just look at you. Look, you are literally an anti-American, anti-free speech coward. You're going to go down the history books at the Criminal News Network. The king. I mean, look at those eyes, folks. If you want to see the eyes of a rat, look at that slobbering to the system and the criminals at CNN, all their warmongering and death, all their fake news, and then running around trying to police the internet. Just look at this guy's eyes, man. He's even more evil looking in person.
Someone think about the decisions that you make.
You'll never have people that love you.
Do you have anything else you'd like to say, Alex?
You are a dishonorable liar. You are a virus to America and freedom. You are authoritarianism. You look like a possum that got caught doing some really nasty stuff. In my view. This is literally the equivalent of the Stasi. You hate America so much, man, you make me sick. You are literally a sociopath. You must be an incredibly hippie person. You're the definition of a fraud. You are a charlatan that goes around lying about people to destroy the First Amendment.
I haven't lied about anyone, Alex.
Yes, you are a congenital liar. You are the definition of dishonor. And one day in the Encyclopedia Britannica, Encyclopedia Galactica, it will have your face next to dishonor and the word rat.
What do you hope to accomplish here?
In my view, you're the equivalent of like the Hitler youth being put on the front line to stop the advance of the Allies. You got some damn evil eyes, son.
That was Alex Jones in the halls of Congress yesterday, confronting one of the secret sneaks behind the scenes at the network. We know what the face of CNN is. It's Jake Woodtapper, who is just like this guy Darcy, but a nicer suit and a better tie, but the same kind of sneak with a different presentation. But it's nice to see somebody getting even a little bit, and listening to him really give it to him good. This is great. Alex is in a lot of trouble now because they took him down off platforms. Alex, if you're listening to the show, I have a suggestion for you. Why don't you run for office? Alex would be a heck of a senator, wouldn't he? Wouldn't he be great to have in the Senate? He'd be one of the people who could counter the banshees in the back of the room. He'd stand up to him. He wouldn't let them roll him over. I'm serious about that. We need guys like Alex Jones in the Senate to counter the Cory Bookers and the Elizabeth Warrens and the others on the other side. Now, don't call and say I agree with you. He's not even listening to the show. I don't know where he is. I would like to see people like that on our side in Congress, by the way, to balance things out. So that's the big story today. There were others. Let's see what else I pulled for you today. Who was the anonymous White House official beyond the resistance? We don't know. Booker releases confidential Kavanaugh documents. Booker's a clown. Democrat socialist in New York State Senate race remakes herself. This is a funny one. There's another one, Julia Salazar, who is 27 years old, tattoo-wearing socialist, running for the New York State Senate against a 67-year-old male Democrat in a district that has been ground zero for Brooklyn's hipster invasion. So she wants to pose herself as a radical leftist, but a few years ago, they found out that Julia Salazar was a Republican who led an anti-abortion group at Columbia University. So she made a quick transformation from a conservative student activist to a Democrat socialist who favors abortion for all women, simply to run for office. Isn't that interesting? Catholicism has lost more of its faithful than any other religion in the U.S. That's a sad story. That's 13% of American adults are former Catholics. People who were raised in the faith but now say they have no religion or converted to Protestantism or other beliefs, according to a survey by the Pew Research Center. Now, I don't want to go into this in great detail, but if you were to ask me why American adults are becoming increasingly disenamored of the Catholic Church, it would be the Pope. I know Catholic people who are great people, and they hate the Pope. They actually despise him for what he's done. They don't see him as a religious leader. They know that he was put in to that position. You know that, look, I know a lot about, I studied this. The Pope is the first non-European Pope in 1,200 years. He was hand-selected by the New World Order the same way Barack Obama was, the same way many people are, picked by these secret hands, call it the deep state, call it the NWO, call it whatever you want. They handpicked this Pope. He's a radical communist, and that's why they picked him. He's a former bouncer. Did you know that the Pope was a former bouncer? I don't think you understand that. This guy is right out of the novel The Red and the Black. He is a very, very, very dangerous person because he's destroying the Catholic Church, single-handedly driving people away from it because of his leftist politics. His leftist politics are destroying the Catholic Church. And that's why people are saying I've had enough of this religion. I'm not going to go to church to be told that I should believe in things I just don't believe in. I don't want to go sit in church and be beaten up as though I'm at Harvard University listening to some radical professor. I'm not going to take it anymore. So people either are not going to church or they're converting to another religion. It's a sad story. It's a very sad story to see what's going on in our world in this time. Phone number here is 855-407-282. 855-400-SAVAGE. Stephen on WGDJ Radio. Stephen, what city are you in?
How are you, sir?
What city are you in, Stephen?
I'm in Troy, New York, sir.
Okay, what's on your mind?
Sir, I am not Hispanic enough, even though my name is Gonzalez. Back in 1986, when I was applying to college, I applied for and received a scholarship from the State University. And I'm from the suburbs. When I went down there, sir, not only were my parents and I made incredibly unwelcome, I never got my $500 check. And in addition, they made a caveat the very next year. My brother was behind me. And if you were from the school district not deemed poor enough, you were not accepted.
All right, so your name is Gonzalez, and they didn't accept you because you weren't from a poor neighborhood? So you have to be, let's see, Hispanic and poor? Is that it?
I happen to look European, sir.
Oh, well, you're from, I get it. Okay, well, I can tell you some stories of African-American individuals I know who came from a family of surgeons who were extremely wealthy, who used affirmative action to get ahead in life, and they got very, very far indeed based on race only. They were not ashamed to do so. I'll be right back.
Savage.
A new forecast predicts more than 146 billion records will be stolen by cyber criminals over the next 5 years. The U.S. will be the largest single target during this time. Even with this forecast, spending on cybersecurity looks to stay kind of small. Small businesses are going to be particularly hard hit and vulnerable because many small businesses spend less than $500 a year on cybersecurity. You imagine that? Now, you know there's a lot of threats in today's connected world. We all know it. One weak link being criminals can get into your internet. Well, good thing that you can have LifeLock identity theft protection with the power of Norton Security to help protect you. I have it. No one can stop every cyber threat, prevent all identity theft, or monitor transactions at all businesses. But new LifeLock with Norton can see threats you might miss on your own. So listen to me. Go to LifeLock.com or call 1-800-LifeLock, promo code SAVAGE. You'll get 10% off your first year wait. Plus, you're going to get a $25 Amazon gift card with annual enrollment. It's a good deal, and you get safety. Again, that's LifeLock.com or 1-800-LifeLock, but you must use promo code SAVAGE. Terms apply. So Burt Reynolds died, 82 years old. Everyone loved Burt. Remember him in Deliverance, where there was an uncut 10-minute hillbilly male rape scene, squeal like a pig. Horrible! Scared a nation for 10 years. It scared a lot of people, Deliverance. But, yeah, he was in it, too, my favorite guy. The one who's in, he was also in Deliverance. But Reynolds was in another movie where Deliverance, I think. Right, same one. And when Burt Reynolds saw test footage of a dummy in a canoe going over the falls in a scene, he told the director, Borman, that the scene looked fake. So Reynolds climbed into the canoe, was sent crashing onto the rocks, and ended up in the hospital. And he said, I asked Borman how the new footage looked, and he said, like a dummy going. I asked Borman how the new footage looked, and he said, like a dummy going over the falls, Reynolds wrote. What a great sense of humor this guy had. Everyone loved him. I liked Reynolds the best in that movie where he played the porn guy. I forget the name of that movie. I have it right. Boogie Nights. Right. Reynolds received an Oscar nom when he portrayed porn director Jack Horner and Paul Thomas Anderson's Boogie Nights, 1997. It was the #1 box office attraction for a 5-year stretch starting in the late 70s. Died Thursday morning at Jupiter Medical Center in Florida. His manager, Eric Kritzer, told the Hollywood Reporter. Always with a wink, Reynolds shined in many action films. Starting Over. He actually liked those better than the action movies. And he said he could have been a serious actor, but he woke up very late in life to realize how good he was. And he wished he had done it earlier in life, but then it was too late. And that's it. So that's it. That was his life. He seems like he enjoyed himself an awful lot. I'm sure he had a great life. And that's him. He's gone. Gone. Like yesterday's wind. Like yesterday's snow. Forgotten already. Like all of us. Gone with the wind. All right. I'm here. I'm still here. Still breathing. Still talking. Back in a few minutes right here on the Savage Nation.
Savage. Warning, the Savage Nation contains adult language, adult content, psychological nudity. Listener discretion is advised. Now, here he is, author of Liberalism is a Mental Disorder, Trump's War, and God, Faith, and Reason, Michael Savage.
But everyone's asking who, if there is someone wrote this anonymous thing about Trump, because everyone's starting to smell a rat and think it wasn't even written. They think it was Sulzberger's gang that made the whole thing up. And, of course, we got Pelosi chiming in, trying to remain relevant. Let's listen to her bumbling her way through this one. Clint, please.
It probably won't take long for us to find out who wrote it, who has denied it already. The vice president. That was my first thought. Dan Coates. Pompeo, they've denied that they have written it. I guess by
why is this woman asked anything when she doesn't even know who she is? When she gets up in the morning, do you think she actually knows who she is? So they're asking her who she thinks the anonymous source is. I see that a pimp from Las Vegas, a Nevada brothel owner turned politician, Dennis Hoff, is being investigated for sexual assault. And what's interesting is that he is the GOP nominee for a state assembly seat. He's a pimp, basically. And he had an HB show called Cat House, which just shows you who runs for office today. He knocked off a long-standing GOP guy, and he's going to run against a Democrat, Alicia Romanov, in November in the race for the District 36 seat in Nevada. So look what the Congress is going to look like in 2019. The class of 2019 is going to make Pelosi look like a deacon of a beautiful church. You're going to have a pimp, prostitute, an outright communist, an auctioneer. It's going to be like the Roman Colosseum. This is going to be fun, actually, in 2019. I'm looking forward to the class of 2019 in Congress. Won't it be fun to see all of these lowlifes? It'll be like Ringling Brothers, Barnum and Bailey, the freak show that I used to go to. You know, when I was a kid, I go to the circus. I never really liked the acts in the main arena. You know, the trapeze and the poor horses they made run around and the elephant. It always got me a little sad for the animals, the whips and the smacking. I went there for the show before the show, which was the, quote, freak show. Now, I don't think I mocked them. I sat there as a biologist in amazement. And as life went on, I read a book by a former, I don't know what to call a person like that anymore. If people were born a certain way. You know, I had a brother who was born a certain way, so I'm very sensitive to it. But nevertheless, everyone has an interest in that type of person. It's one of God's gifts to humanity. The fact is, in primitive societies, people who have such birth anomalies are often looked at as some gurus, people who see things that the rest of us can't see, which is probably true. But I love those shows, and I cannot wait for 2019 when the freak show of Barnum and Bailey will be in the halls of Congress. If you think it was bad now with Pelosi and Pocahontas, you got a lot to look forward to in 2019. You know, out with the new and in with the old. But today we're asking you about the anonymous thing and, you know, who wrote it. What's the point of asking? The anonymous White House official. It's a fun story for a bored country, for a nation like ours that looks to new entertainment every second. Every minute you need a new Netflix drama, a new HBO drama, a new Showtime drama, a new political drama. Every second we need something new to get us through a day. And so we have something new now. Anonymous wrote that Trump is a this, Trump is a that. And I don't believe it was, I don't know. How would I know who wrote it? What do I know? But Melania Trump, who's the greatest first lady America's ever had, called it a cowardly thing to write an anonymous thing like this. And she's right. You know, she comes from an ex-Soviet country. Do you know that? So she knows firsthand what the Soviet Stasi was like, what the anonymous accusations lead to. And now we have the New York Times, and I'm not shocked by it because they've long been Stalinist. If you go back to the 1930s when they had an apologist for Hitler who denied that Hitler was killing anybody, people were real happy in the boxcars, according to him. But Melania comes from that background, so she knows what this kind of Soviet tactic will do to this nation. And she said that the anonymous writer, meaning people with no names who are writing our nation's history, are nothing but cowards. And I hope to God that the White House can track it down. You know, I don't know how they can't really. How can they not track it down? In this age of surveillance, they can't find that? They don't have anyone in the NSA? I was laying in bed this morning. I usually think very clearly at dawn when I wake up, and I decide not to get out of bed. I think about the more athletic people than myself who are either paddleboarding at dawn. Crazy. I'm laying in bed. I look out the window at the bay, and I see a guy I love, very nice neighbor. He's paddleboarding at 5 in the morning. I admire him. But I myself go back to bed. I pull the curtains even tighter. I go back for my beauty rest for another hour or two. I see people. I hear they're in gyms at 5 in the morning, yoga 5:30 in the morning. They're running. I don't know if it's going to be good for their longevity, but good luck to them. But I get my clearest thoughts at dawn. Usually if I stay in bed and I'm calm and I think about the day ahead, I can think extremely clearly. This is well known to writers. It has been known to thinkers through the ages, which is that when you first become conscious in the morning is when your thoughts are most clear. And instead of blowing it by running around the block or paddleboarding on a cold bay, what you ought to do is stay in bed for like a half an hour in a dark room and just use your mind and see where it goes. Write down some of your thoughts. You won't believe how clear your mind can be early in the morning. You know what I'm saying? That's how it is. All right, 855-407-282. We're talking about how affirmative action may have affected your life because Cory Booker is a big supporter of affirmative action. He tried to nail Kavanaugh to a cross because Kavanaugh wouldn't confirm that he wants to base admissions and hiring on race, not upon qualifications. That's basically what it is. Don't be mistaken for 1 second what it actually is. And the people who are most affected by affirmative action in our society are white males and Asian males, primarily, but not solely. Basically, anyone who's super qualified is immediately eliminated. Anyone who's super intelligent is immediately eliminated. Anyone who's super qualified in any way is eliminated because we need a country where there's diversity. And the diversity can mean anything. It can mean someone who's stupid, someone who's a drunk. Diversity can mean anything. Well, you want a drunk in the workplace because that would make it a diverse workplace? Do you know that according to labor laws in California, which is the most employer-unfriendly state in the world, maybe the world, do you know that you cannot fire someone who shows up to work drunk? It's considered a disability. I will tell you, I know the labor laws in California quite well. I study them often, and it's why businesses are leaving in droves. You know, it raises another question, Clint. Open up a line or two to the following. Which state in America is the most employer-friendly state in America? I know the most employer-unfriendly state. The state worst to do business in is California. People are entitled. As I say, they can screw up at work. Do you know that coming to work late is considered a disability in California? Did you know that? I bet you won't believe any of this. Showing up late to work is not considered tardiness or, let's say, character defect. It's considered a disability. Everything that you saw in your life to be wrong is now considered a disability in California. So businesses are leaving in droves in the state. And even Google, by the way. Do you know that Google is thinking of leaving the state of California because it's almost impossible to run a business here? I'll bet you didn't know that. And is it tied to affirmative action? You betcha. Oh, yes, you betcha. It's tied to affirmative action. It's tied to labor laws that are made so that an employer cannot get a worker who's not going to be a pain in the neck, you know. So let me take some calls here. We're running right on time. The train's running on time. You got to say one thing about me is I make the trains run on time. I got to tell you that. KSFO, Dominic, line 3, you're on the Savage Nation. Go ahead, please.
Hey, Dr. Savage. I listen to you, man. I respect you. I've heard people talk this. And after I listen to you, I really, really have a high regards for you. So I actually hold you more accountable than the person that's in the White House. And the only thing that I say, man, I don't believe in this anonymous stuff because anybody can say anything. If you can't, like, show your face and to the person's face and say, this is how I feel about you, then I don't want to listen to you. But I am concerned about, Donald Trump's conduct as it relates to him as a family man, because I'm married 21 years happy. And just those are the kind of things that concern me.
I'm not going to argue with you. On that issue, you are 100% right. It is not good. But did he do this stuff while he was married to Melania?
I don't know, man. We don't know. I mean, I don't know, man. I just want to, I don't like to see you get so upset, man, because there was another guy on the radio, man, that just had a heart attack. And man, I don't want you to, like you say,
no, I think about it every night because I told you, every day to me above ground is a good day. My poor father died young. My grandfather died young. My great-grandfather died young. I'm about 20 years older than the eldest male in my lineage. It's all luck. Every minute alive. Come on, I'm just joking. We don't know what tomorrow will bring. A guy in his 30s could get a heart attack.
You're right, man, but just stop getting upset because it makes me nervous.
No, it's true. I try not to. In my early days in radio, I would get much more upset than now. Have you heard me get upset today?
It actually concerns me, man. I don't want to see.
You're like a friend of mine. I can hear that you actually want me to be on the radio for a very long time.
You are, man, but stop getting upset, please. I'm asking you.
Well, you sound like a good man. I got to tell you, I'm going to send you a free copy of Stop Mass Hysteria the minute it comes out. I hear I'm going to get copies next week. You'll be amongst the first to get the first edition, first printing, which is bound to be a very valuable book one day on eBay. Save it for your grandchildren. I love that caller. He actually cares about my health. Can you believe it? If I had as much care from my family as I got from that caller, I'd be a happy man. I haven't had a member of my family call me recently and say, I hope that you are well, don't get excited, don't lose your temper because it releases certain enzymes and hormones that could destroy you. I actually think the opposite is true. All my life I had a hot temper. All my life I would fly off the handle at the slightest thing. I'd get angry. Why do you assume that if you fly off the handle you're going to die young? Did you ever think the opposite is true? Maybe keeping it in will kill you faster and give you colon cancer. Maybe letting it out is a good thing. Maybe being an old-style personality is good, like an old-world type that gets mad at everything over every second, angry over something. There are people like that. They live long. I mean, I don't know that the emotions are related to health as much as we think. I would think a little bit, yes. But personally, from my point of view, given the kind of I'm going to try to describe my nature just for another second. I'm an expressive person. and I like to express myself and let it all out, which is why I'm good on the radio, because you more or less, what you hear is what you hear, and what you hear is what I am. I'm not too guarded, and or I'm guarded just enough to survive. But the thing is, I think keeping things in bottles you up, and I think the bottled up emotions are what cause the problems in a human body, whether they be tumors or other things. And whether that has been documented is another question. I remember back in 82, I wrote a book called Maximum Immunity, and it was a chapter on the autoimmune diseases. And I remember in researching that chapter, the famous story of a female race driver who crashed a Ferrari in a race. Soon thereafter, she developed rheumatoid arthritis, and the doctor who was writing about psychosomatic medicine said that it was related to her sense of shame that she wrecked the car. Now, and that's not directly related, but it's related somewhat to emotions and health, okay? Or more specifically, emotions and disease causation, which is a topic I've been kind of obsessed with or interested in my entire life. Well, we've distracted ourselves a little bit, and I'll be back to do more so on the Savage Nation.
Savage.
KMAJ Radio, Kansas City. Mark, welcome. You're on the Savage Nation. What's on your mind?
Dr. Savage, I'm glad that you're having a good day today.
No, I do have some good days and some bad days. Yesterday was on a scale of a 0 to 100, minus 100. Who's in the background? Is that your wife or your therapist? All right, there's something there. The wife's telling him what to say. There's a lot of husbands and wives like that. The husband talks, and the wife's in the background egging him on what to say. Unbelievable. Nobody hears I'm in a good mood today. He said I sound like I'm having fun, which I am. I can't explain why. I can explain why, but I can't explain why on the radio. No, that's not what you're thinking. I don't mean it that way. I don't really know why. Honest to God, I'm kind of, I don't know. It's been the same every day this week. I know why, because there's been no technical breakdowns on the show today. Let's start with that one. My Chinese fortune cookie, I just read it this morning. I was to throw the cookies out because I never eat sweets. And I finally broke it open. It had been sitting there, and it says, any day above ground is a good day. That's very cheerful. I said, yeah, that's a nice fortune. Any day above ground is a good day. At last, the onion you are eating is someone else's water lily. I kind of don't get that one. It's not that funny. Well, these machines are good. Accept something that you cannot change and you will feel better. All right, that's the AA thing. I heard about it. Everyone I ever knew about was in recovery except me. I remember 25 years, swear to God, this is 30 years ago. There was a party here where I live in a backyard, and it included a lot of different people, including a very famous Native American activist whose name I won't mention. Everyone there was in recovery. I was walking around with a vodka in my hand, and I would say to the person, you having a drink? No, I'm in recovery. I seem to be the only one not in recovery. That was 30 years ago. So it seems I've recovered by not being in recovery. I mean, what did I need it for? I only drink a drink or two a night. That's about it. I never go. Even when I was young, I was very lucky. Well, as a kid, you don't know anything. You're stupid. I mean, there were some benders when I was 18, 17 where you got dizzy and stupid. Kids don't know anything. That's why they shouldn't vote till they're 21. All they're good for is cannon fodder at that age. But nevertheless, I mean, when you get older, you do find out what alcohol does to you, and you have a feedback on it. You can titrate yourself to a point where you know just when to stop if you are not an alcoholic. And I've known alcoholics who've told me the opposite. They said, you're lucky because you have a feedback mechanism, meaning if I have a drink or two, and some days I don't even want one, some days I might have a second, and then I feel that's enough. I can taste it. It doesn't taste right. That's called feedback mechanism, and I stop. An alcoholic has no such feedback mechanism. They just drink until they're obliterated. Now, that's another story, But speaking of which, I shifted what I'm drinking. Maybe that's why I'm feeling good, because I'm drinking, I switched to like 15-year-old scotch, which I've had in the cabinet. I don't drink much of it. And I, like yesterday, after the show, did what I do. And around 5 o'clock, I sat quietly in the backyard, and I sipped on an old scotch, and I tell you, relaxed everything in me. It didn't ruin anything, nothing, no punchline, no joke about it. Maybe it's good the next day, who knows? But we'll talk about a non-affirmative action, all the news right here on the Savage Nation.
Savage.
It is the Savage Nation. At a certain point, you have to laugh at them. You take a look at the Attorney General of New Jersey, who's persecuting the Catholic Church. Let me see if I can describe her in a way that will not offend too many people. Well, look at her face. She is a large woman. She looks like a man. She looks like she's a mean man. And she hates the Catholic Church. Her target, white heterosexual alpha males. And if you don't see a trend going on in America today, well, I'll try to help you see the trend going on in America today. So there's a war going on in America that at the end of the day can be quite destructive. And I think we all have to put aside our tribal identity, our racial identity, and come to understand what's for the betterment of society. And I think we would all agree that qualifications should be key, not race. And in every sphere of life, whether it's on a playing field or in a boardroom, I think that the most qualified individual. Now, the question is, how do you determine what's the most qualified? That's an interesting question because we're talking about affirmative action. And you could say that people of a different background, let's say, than the typical, let's say, preppy, upper-middle-class white background, even if the kid gets straight A's, might bring a diverse view to a situation that could be somewhat broadening and not necessarily negative. You could argue that, and you may not be wrong. But to assume that if a person comes from an impoverished background that they're automatically, let us say, better is crazy. You know, I believe that it doesn't matter what your background is. If you cut the mustard, you cut the mustard. That's how I was raised. What do you think tests were for? They weren't made to discriminate against anyone. How would you explain how Chinese Americans, for example, who were as oppressed in this country as anyone, treated like second-class citizens, how have they achieved so much in this society? Through hard work and through a heritage that respects the written word and respects studies and pushes the child mercilessly to do homework and to get ahead. It's that simple. You don't have to look any further than that. So if you eliminate those qualities in an applicant of any kind, what you wind up with is a less than pristine workforce, a less than pristine anything. Now, it doesn't apply on a playing field, does it? We know it doesn't. Can you imagine, and this is a simplistic argument, but it's a very valid one, what if the NFL started to pick players based upon affirmative action rather than upon qualifications? You're telling me a fullback that was not made of iron and could run and throw a ball, there was someone who's not that, was put in that position, the team would be run over, wouldn't they? I mean, let's use common sense together. Well, let's go to a basketball team. You're going to take a guy 5'7" from Poland and put him on a basketball team, and you expect him to do as well as a guy who's 6'7"? It's not going to happen. So, in other words, on a playing field, it's pretty obvious that we don't want affirmative action. We want the best possible player. Well, shouldn't that be the same everywhere in the country? Well, I don't know why Cory Booker's so obsessed with using things other than qualifications to place people in schools and get jobs. I don't quite understand why he thinks any American would accept that. And I think that for the betterment of our society, without quality, there can be no equality. That's how I see it. And I do not come from a wealthy background. I do not come from a background where we had a secret handshake and I got where I am because I had the secret handshake. I came from a poor immigrant family, and I was driven to prove myself my whole life. It's as simple as that. I'm like What Makes Sammy Run, if you ever read that novel. And I'm trying to be less of that as I get older, but I can't. I'm still very competitive. I'll probably be competitive right to the end. The last breath, I'll be competing with the doctor or the nurse in some way in the hospital, trying to tell them I know more than they do. But I think that's what keeps me going. And I respect that in myself. What do you want me to do, Mr. Laid Back? People are not really laid back as much as they pretend they are in the Bay Area of San Francisco. They make believe they're laid back, but they're really not. That's a front. So again, if you're driven to succeed, you succeed if you're good. And if you're driven to succeed and you're not good, you shouldn't succeed based on anything other than your success, whether it be running for a gold medal or running for a job. And that's why I totally oppose affirmative action. Not so much for personal reasons. I was able to overcome the rejection of the academy where they put very less qualified women and minorities and immigrants in positions that I knew I was deserving of. But it was a long time ago. I don't walk around thinking about it. I don't give it a second thought. You're talking about a very long time ago. Think about it. I earned my PhD in 1978, and it was the defining moment in my life. I thought, every professor said to me, that doctorate, you need a union card. I said, what do you mean a union card? I have 2 master's degrees. I've written 6 books at that time. They said, no. You need that PhD. That's your union card. So I said, okay, if I need a union card, I'm going to get the best union card in the world. And at that time, one of the top universities in the world in the sciences was the University of California at Berkeley. It still is, by the way, based upon Nobel Prize winners and whatnot. Never mind the popular notions about Berkeley this, Berkeley that. In the sciences, Berkeley was and probably still is in the top 5. So, to make a long story short, I was already in my 30s. I had 2 children. I was working 2 jobs. I applied. I got into UC Berkeley. Fine. Well, okay, so I got my doctorate in 2 years and 7 or 8 months, which is a world record, I think. I don't think anyone ever beat me. You want to tell that to Jack Dorsey or some of the other techies if they think that I'm just another, talker who doesn't know what he's talking about. But the fact is that I couldn't get a teaching job after. That's all I wanted. I'm a very humble guy at the end of the day. I envision myself as, one of those schmendry kind of professors who do nothing. They have 8 contact hours with students and they make a big salary. And they get to smoke a pipe in a room with a lot of books. It seems nice to me to sit around and just think and get paid for it. Well, so be it. I wasn't lucky enough to get in because affirmative action had become a storm. And it cauterized me. It made me very angry. It turned me into a political figure rather than a thinking figure per se. And here I am many years later, and I can't say that it was for the worse in my life. But it's not true for everyone. There are a lot of men out there who were shafted by affirmative action, whose lives were diverted. I'll never forget, I remember, it was in the 1970s at the University of California at Berkeley. The National Science Foundation came out, and they were running a thing called science scholarships for women in science. Well, I went there and protested. I stood up in the back of the room. I said, how can you give scholarships to women in science simply based upon their gender or sex? They laughed at me in the room, and the professor or the idiot who came out from the NSF laughed at me in the front of this auditorium and said, well, it's Berkeley, and the whole auditorium laughed at me. Now, I was a young father. I had no job. I didn't have the job I wanted. I was struggling. I earned my doctorate, and I wanted to teach. I was so angry. You have no idea what rage was instilled in me at that time. But, it's like my father taught me when I was very young. He had some of his own peasant wisdom. And he used to tell me about oysters. And he said if you take a wire or something like that, and he was a little bit on the tough, sadistic type, too. But to him, he was toughening me up. He said if you take a wire or something and you put it in an oyster and you irritate the oyster, that oyster will produce a pearl. That's what he said to me. So in his mind, he was irritating me to produce the pearls within me, I guess, in his mind. It worked. But at what cost, man? I would rather have just been an oyster rather than a pearl. I'm going to be honest with you. It would have been nice to just lay back, you know what I'm saying? But that was not my calling. I mean, this is my fate. It's too late to ever redo your life. You can't look back, or you will turn to stone. And the fact is you go forward. And there's another great saying that was written, which is, life must be lived forward, but it can only be understood backward. I read that in one of Aldous Huxley's books. I love that one. Life must be lived forward, but it can only be understood looking backward. Now, I realize this is, kind of philosophical and people don't like it. They say, how dare you talk philosophy and tell stories on the radio during drive time? Why, we got news to cover. We got breaking news. It's the breaking news. There are people who actually believe that's what talk radio is supposed to be. We got breaking news for you. Or flashing a sign in your eye every 2 seconds like Fox News. Every 3 seconds, a flashing light, and there's Brett Baer with a toupee. What's the breaking news? Or there's a shoe in your face. 5 of them sitting around. The 5 jive artists there on the jive. The 5 jive artists are on. So when you have to do breaking news, you can get breaking news by clicking onto the Drudge Report. You get all the news in 1 second. That's not what I'm supposed to be doing in talk radio. What I do in talk radio is an art form, and that's what talk radio is supposed to be what I do. I've reinvented talk radio, and I will go down in the history of talk radio as one of the greatest inventors of a new form of talk radio. And if you think that this is good, you're not wrong, but you don't know what's coming yet. But I have to button the old lip because there'll be a new innovation coming at a certain point that will revolutionize this industry and will be written in the annals of the industry that I am in as yet another innovation by myself. But I'm getting a little too self-indulgent here. Let's go back to the breaking news on the Savage Nation when I return right here on your local station.
Savage.
All right, if you take an atom of nitrogen and you bond it with an atom of oxygen, you create nitric oxide. It's a miracle molecule that your own body makes, which fuels your cardiovascular health and helps keep you vibrant, nitric oxide. But as we age, our bodies need help with this important process. Super Beets by Human, luckily, has harnessed the power of nutrient-enriched beets to create a superfood that helps your body make more nitric oxide on your own, in your own body. And a teaspoon of Super Beets every day supports your cardiovascular health and blood pressure levels, and it gives you natural energy with no caffeine kick or sugar high. We're talking real healthy natural energy. Stephen from Illinois says the Super Beets taste is pleasant, as is the increase in energy. It's a great caffeine substitute without the negative caffeine side effects. I want you to call 800-481-0504 or go to savagelovesbeets.com, and you will find out how you can get a free 30-day supply of Super Beets and free shipping with your first purchase. Feel the 1 + 1 = boom effect of Super Beets. Go to 800-481-0504 or go to savagelovesbeets.com today. Let's take some callers as this show comes to the end of hour number 2 today, this Thursday. Jeff up in Oregon on KUGN, which is Eugene, Oregon. Jeff, what's on your mind, my friend?
Hi, Michael. I'm a long-term listener, and we've talked before. I heard you talking about heart attacks and losing your temper. And I said to my wife, mind you, I've been a doctor for 45 years, when I've seen you or listened to you lose your temper with somebody or an issue, that you were going to kill yourself. And I used to quote to my patients a study where actually anger is more dangerous than cholesterol.
Oh, doctor, I agree with you 100%. Cholesterol is a myth. The whole cholesterol myth has been exploded as a complete fraud. I agree with you on that. But what is the hormone that's released when a person gets angry?
Well, it could be cortisone. It could be epinephrine, adrenaline.
And are you saying that the release of such compounds increases the risk of heart attack? In what mechanism?
I think the mechanism has to do with the epinephrine constricting the blood vessels and speeding up the heart in a setting where there's probably some risk. I've seen people die suddenly several times, actually, who were just angry, and the blood pressure skyrocketed, and down they went. I'm
not denying it. I've had families say, calm down, calm down.
Yeah.
But, there are Zen masters like me who can get angry without having their blood pressure go up and without having their heartbeat increase. There's actually a way to control your body while getting angry. It's a trick. I think I should write a book on it.
Yeah, I'd like to know.
I really don't know what. I can actually get angry without having my heart rate go up. It's a strange phenomenon. Maybe it's called schizophrenia. I'm not sure. Come on. See, I have a self-deprecating sense of humor, but I don't really know. I'm not saying you're wrong at all, doctor. And, when I was in grad school, I had a professor who told me the same thing. He's seen and done autopsies, he said, on many people who died in perfect health for no reason. They don't even know the cause of the heart attack. And he said to me that disease has 3 components from his point of view. This is a long time ago. 1/3 is genetic, 1/3 is environmental, and 1/3 is unknown. Would you say that's still true?
Yeah, I think that's basically it. But I do think adrenaline and stress and anger play a role. I've just seen it too many times. I've read about it too many times. And I would challenge you to have somebody check your blood pressure and your pulse the next time. See?
Okay. No, I try not to get angry anymore on the radio. But let's go back a number of years. The famous story in the 70s of Jim Fixx, a very famous runner, who dropped dead of a heart attack while running in 104-degree heat in Vermont on an asphalt road. Now, he was a man who didn't believe in diet and heart attacks. He said exercise would overcompensate for everything. And I remember at the time I was an avid runner. I also was writing, if you can believe it or not, for Runner's Magazine. People don't know that. I learned a lot from that. I mean, which is, exercise per se is not the answer to it all.
the answer to that, in part, and I've discussed this in the past many times with patients and other folks, is that his running may have given him an extra 5 or 10 years rather than him dying at a younger age. And so people point out how healthy he was and he keeled over, but probably he would have died younger.
Yeah, but don't you think that his disavowing the benefits of nutrients and a proper diet for health was contributing factors?
It could have been.
Well, so you don't believe in diet and its relationship to cardiovascular health at all?
No, I do. I just think it's blown out of proportion. But I think genetics...
No, I do, too. I generally have eaten a very lean diet for 30 years, but lately, in the last number of years, I have found that I need higher amounts of animal protein in order for my brain to function properly.